Hello YouTubers, how is everybody doing? It's the J-Rex here. I hope everybody's okay and trying to make the best out of life. Yeah, so let's get right down to it. Inflation is destroying America. Well, no, probably inflation has already destroyed America. So I'm going to wing it. I'm not even going off of bullet points. I'm just winging it to see if the video is more free flowing. But yeah, inflation destroyed America, and America used to be such a rich and wealthy nation. We were so rich and we were so wealthy. Like, people talk about the 1950s, like, you know, like, okay, we'll talk about the 1950s. Like, 1950s was a pretty good time. You know, you could get like a burger for like 5 cents. Only the father needed to work. Only the father needed to work, and that was enough money to take care of his wife and his kids. It was more than enough money. You did not need the wife working. Like, a burger is 5 cents. Can anybody think about like a burger being 5 cents now? Like, Jesus Christ! Like, can you imagine what a dream come true that would be if a burger was still 5 cents today? Like, but like the real good times were like. The real good times, I think, was like back in the 1920s. That was when, because the 1950s, the Federal Reserve banking system, the Federal Reserve banking system is the ones who got us in this whole mess by printing a bunch of dollars out of thin air, creating all this inflation. But like back in the 1920s, the Federal Reserve Bank was still new, and we had not gotten all this inflation yet. They were just created. We just got the bankers just got implemented into the system. So the damage was not done. Extensive damage was not done yet. Like the 1920s, like, America was such a wealthy nation, and from the Roaring 20s, that's what they call it. I think that was the true peak of American civilization. And God, America we were doing so good. Like, you know, it was the Roaring 20s for a reason. You think about the Roaring 20s, what was that? A lot of great times, a lot of people having fun, a lot of people living it up, a lot of people living the good life, a lot of people getting wild, a lot of people roaring. It was like the Roaring 20s for a reason. It was a very good time. And from what I heard, like what I heard, the Roaring 20s, it seemed like everybody was partying back then. Like, everybody was partying, drinking, dancing, getting wild, letting loose. It seemed like a really good time, and it was like, it seemed like a really good time where people were not like stressed out or that worried. Everybody was just dancing, partying, having fun, having a good time. Like, we were so wealthy. America was so wealthy that people could afford to do that. People could afford to go out and party and drink and have a good time and live lavishly, and like, we could afford that. We were that wealthy. Can you think of it? Can people party now? Like, the party scene is dead, isn't it? I don't think anybody goes out and parties anymore, because like, partying is like too expensive. People cannot afford a party. So people cannot even afford a party now because it's like so expensive. And for what I heard, like, more testimonies, it was like, apparently, like, the city, like, people that lived in New York, they said like everybody was so wealthy. It was like the city was made out of gold. Like, the roads were paved with gold. The city was made with gold. It was like, it really, like, everybody just had so much money, and everybody was like so wealthy that's what like the Roaring 20s was like. And I think the standard salary back in the 1920s could get you could get you like a house. You could get like a house on like a regular salary. Nothing crazy. You don't need to be like a freaking, like a rich business tycoon or a rich like celebrity or like a rich, I don't know, like a rich tycoon. You don't have to be just a regular job. And you could have bought like a house in like a couple of years, like 2, 3, 4 years. Like, you could have bought a house in like 2, 3, 4, 2 or 3 or 4 years. Like, Jesus Christ, can anybody imagine, like how many years do we got to work now to get a house? There's people working 20, 30, 40, 50 years, and they still have not paid off their mortgage. They're still like trying to pay off their mortgage. Like, you would have to work 20, 30, 40, 50 plus years to be able to even have a chance of paying off your house. So it's like, I can get more into depth with that in another video, like the salaries back of the Roaring Twenties. But yeah, for now, for the most part, inflation destroyed America. So it's not like we were doing so good. We were so far ahead. We were the richest, most powerful nation in the entire world. We had so much money. We had so much money. People were buying yachts. People were buying mansions. Everyday American citizens were buying yachts and mansions. We were so freaking rich, like, back then. Like, we built an empire, such a powerful, rich, and wealthy empire. And average everyday American citizens buying mansions, yachts, living it up, having parties like every other week, drinking, having parties, dancing, having a great time. Like, the cities were made out of gold. We were doing so good. How did we fuck it all up? And it still aggravates me so much to this day how we had a huge lead. We were so far ahead, and we somehow found a way to fuck it all up. We were like the production leaders of the world. We were producing so much. We were creating so much and producing so much. Like, if anybody needed anything, they had to get it from us. And we were like the pioneers of so many technological revolutions. Like, we created the car, we created television, we created the radio. Like, we were like revolutionizing, I think we created air conditioning, right? We created air conditioning, and we even created the refrigerator. Like, we were like, I might be wrong on that one, but I think I'm right. I think we also created the refrigerator and air conditioning. But like, we were like creating like so many technological revolutions. We were like producing so much, and we were so rich and so wealthy. We were doing so good. How did we mess everything up? Like, God, and it aggravates me so much, man. And you know why everything got messed up? Because we let the bankers get involved. There was like basically no central banking system back in the 1800s. And then in the 1900s, freaking our president, was he Woodrow Wilson? Freaking sold out our country to the freaking bankers and signed a deal with the bankers and instituted the Federal Reserve banking system back in 1919, I think, 1918. So, oh my God, but we had no central banking system in the 1800s, and then the 1800s allowed us to become like a powerhouse. And by the time we made it to the beginning of the 1900s, the 20th century, we were the most powerful nation in the entire world, and we were so wealthy and so rich and so far ahead, and Americans were living such a good life, and it aggravates me so much that we fucked it all up. We found a way to fuck it all up. What is the federal... I don't know how you can have such a huge lead and you fuck it up so bad, but what is the Federal Reserve banking system? The Federal Reserve banking system is basically a bank, but like they are in control. Now that I think about it, what does the Federal Reserve actually do? Like, what do they actually do that's actually beneficial to our country. Like, as far as I know, all the Federal Reserve banking system does is they just create dollars out of thin air. They just create dollars out of thin air. They print dollars out of thin air, and they create more inflation. As far as I know, that's all the Federal Reserve banking system does. The government asks for dollars, and then the Federal Reserve banking system prints dollars out of thin air and gives it to the government. And we have, the national debt has gotten so bad, and you know, people are like, what is the national debt? The national debt is basically all of the dollars that have been printed by the Federal Reserve banking system. And I believe, I might be wrong. Does anybody actually know what the national debt is? As far as I know, it's all of the dollars. It's all the dollars created by the Federal Reserve banking system that the government and the public owe back to the Federal Reserve banking system. It's money that the government and the public owe to the Federal Reserve banking system. But the thing is, though, when you print more dollars, when you borrow more money, like every time the government asks the Federal Reserve banking system for dollars, they print the dollars out of thin air, and the national debt goes up. All right, and then the same can be go to the public. If the public ever borrows money from the bank does not give money that they already have to the people, to the public, when they borrow money. When the people borrow money, the bankers create that money out of thin air. They don't actually get that money from some kind of money pile that they already have. They print the money out of thin air, and they give the printed money to the public. So it's like, but I think the national debt is like, it's mostly just like the government. Like, most of the national debt is comprised of money that the government owes back to the Federal Reserve banking system. I think it's like 70% of the debt is like the government, and like 30% of the debt is owned by the public, or maybe 20 to 30% of the debt is owned by the public. So yeah, it's bad. So it's like, but the thing is, though, when you create dollars out of thin air, you're not creating more money. You're basically spending money. Inflation is spending money. You're not creating money, you're spending money. And what happens when you spend more money? You become more and more broke. And that's what happens. When you have a dollar and then the bankers create a dollar, that does not mean there's now $2 in existence and you got more money. It means when the bankers print a dollar, your dollar is now cut in half. You know, your dollar is cut in half. Your dollar is now worth 50 cents, and the dollar that the bankers printed is worth 50 cents. The dollar that they created out of thin air is 50 cents now. They took your money. They printed money out of thin air, and they took the purchasing power of your money. The bankers are stealing your money. The government is stealing your money. Whenever they print dollars out of thin air, they are spending your money. And we have such an irresponsible government. We have such an irresponsible government spending all the money. Why do they keep spending all this damn money? They spend all this money on all these stupid wars in the Middle East. Why do we care so much about the Middle East? Who cares about the Middle East? Stop spending so much money. Stop spending so much money on the stupid wars in the Middle East. Why do we care? Why do we care so much about Ukraine, dude? Just, who cares? We cannot afford it. We cannot afford it. Stop spending money on all these wars, all right? And making Americans more and more broke. The government spends all this money on all these stupid wars, and they're spending our hard-earned money and making us more and more broke because they want to do all these stupid wars on the other side of the planet. When you got Americans starving, they don't even have enough money to pay for rent. They don't have enough money to pay for food. Americans are freaking living on the streets, you know, kicked out of their houses, living on the streets, and broke, no money, no house, no car, no food, and sleeping on a bus bench, like freaking freezing their butt off, sleeping on a bus bench in the middle of January or something, homeless. And then you got the stupid government over here spending all these spending all this freaking money, going to doing all these stupid wars on the other side of the planet. What is wrong with the government? Why does the government care so much about everything else that's going on around the country when they're focusing on everything else except their own country. Like, dude, why are you spending all that money doing all those stupid wars and taking care of all these other, like, they're taking care of all these other problems that are outside of our country. They're like focusing on all these things that are outside of our own country, and like they're so focused on what's going on out there instead of focusing on what's going on in here. Like, and they're just spending all this money. Why do they care so much about what's going on out there? Just focus on what's going on in here. And you're spending and the Americans are busting their butt. The Americans are busting their butt. And then, you know, like, working really hard, working 2 or 3, 4 jobs, just for what? Just for the government to spend all of their hard-earned money through inflation and spend all the Americans' hard-earned money that they're busting their butt off, working 2, 3, 4 jobs, and they spend it on a stupid war on the other side of the planet. It's just so aggravating, dude. They could take that money. You know what? It would be better. It would be better if they took all that money and then what about fix our crumbling infrastructure? You know, all these roads with potholes in them. Freaking the roads with the potholes like falling apart. You know, they could just like improve our infrastructure, improve our roads, our highways, and what about our internet infrastructure? Like, our internet infrastructure is still made out of copper cabling, right? Something that was made like 100 years ago. They could fix our internet infrastructure, and you know, like they could give that money to the homeless. Give that money to the homeless so that, you know, give that money to the homeless so they could have a house to live in or something, so they're not sleeping on a bus bench. Give that money to like 1,000 homeless people or 10,000 homeless people. Give them houses. Make food shelters that give food to the hungry and the needy, to hungry, starving Americans. Like, there's so much that they could do with that money. And what do? They spend it on stupid wars. Like, our government is just off in La La Land or something. They're off in La La Land and they're not paying attention. But you know what? The better thing would have been done? If the government never spent any of that money in the first place and just left it alone. And if the government just did what they were supposed to do, like how they were originally supposed to be. They were supposed to just back off and leave the Americans alone. Leave the American people alone and let the American people just live their life. That was the original thing the government was supposed to do. Just piss off and leave the American people alone and let them be free to pursue life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. That was the original intention of the government, was to just piss off. And they wanted to if they had just pissed off and left everybody alone, imagine how wealthy, and just let Americans do what they gotta do. Just imagine how much rich Americans would be. Like, instead of inflation, we would have had deflation. America would have become even more rich than the 1920s. We would have become wealthier. We would have become richer. The dollar would have become more powerful, more stronger, more valuable. There would have been deflation, and then we would have had more money. Instead of the government spending money, the Americans are creating more money. We would have become richer and wealthier, and like, you can forget about a burger being 5 cents, a nickel. Think about a burger being 1 penny. A burger would have been like 1 freaking penny, man. The economy would have been so good, a house would have been like, who knows, like $100 or like $1,000. Who knows? Like, a house would have gotten so cheap that Americans probably could have bought a house in like 6 months. They only would have had to work for 6 months, and they could have bought a house in like a couple of months, you know? And like, Americans don't have to worry about, you know, going to McDonald's and spending their entire week's worth of pay on a Big Mac at McDonald's. They don't have to worry about that because, you know, it's like, but you know why it's like that? You know why Americans cannot even afford McDonald's now is because the government spent all of the money. Americans do not have any money to spend because the government spent all of the money to begin with. So Americans are like, why don't I have any money? Because the government spent your money, that's why. And like, so it's like, Oh my gosh, but imagine a burger being 1 penny, dude. Imagine a house being only $1,000 or like $500 or like $100. Imagine a car being only $10. Imagine how great the economy would be if we just kept going the way that we were going. If we just kept that momentum going from the 1920s. All right, from the early 1900s. The economic boom we had, if we had just kept that momentum going, imagine how rich we would be. Americans living in mansions, Americans having luxury cars, just average Americans throwing parties every other week, Americans eating lavishly 5-star meals like every other, like who knows, every other day, every other week, who knows. Americans eating, 5-star meals, 5-star 5-star like freaking chef French cuisine, 5-star French cuisine or something, I don't know, like some of the finest quality food from around the world, like mansions, luxury cars. We would be so wealthy. We would have been so, and these are just average everyday Americans living like this, living like millionaires. We would have been such a wealthy, rich country, and the government fucked everything up. The bankers fucked everything up. They spent all the goddamn money. There's no money left. Jesus Christ. There's no money left. There's nothing left. It's gone. It's all gone. The stupid bankers and the government spent all of the goddamn money. And this is so frustrating to me as an American because we were so far ahead. We were so rich and powerful. We were such a wealthy and wonderful nation, and we found a way to fuck it all up. Alright, I gotta go to work. Thank you everybody for watching. Have a good one. Bye.